What's going on, everybody? It is Monday, January 13th. It is 8 o'clock. We've got a little tiny bit of wild card weekend plus. It's not super wild card weekend anymore ahead of us with the Rams and Vikings about to square off. I wanted to hop on Spenny playoffs here, talking a little bit of Ravens opening a can of whip ass on the Pittsburgh Steelers and looking ahead to the Buffalo Bills as the Ravens will travel up to the Great White North to take on those northern Canadians, southern Canadians in Buffalo Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Boy, oh boy. What a weekend. What a matchup ahead. Night 8 of the playoffs. We will be going live every single night this week, continuing what we did last week. For those of you who tuned in to the instant analysis, I watched a couple bits and pieces of it. That looked like it was a funny one. But man, the Ravens obviously defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers 28-14. And what more could you have asked for as a fan if you wanted to see this Baltimore Ravens football team put on a performance? Even the jitters on the Steelers opening drive, they punt. Steven Sims muffs a punt. The Ravens then open up with a 3-yard run, which good. But then they get a false start. It's 2nd and 11, and it doesn't matter. They drive down the football field. 1 week ago today, I talked about what an opportunity this was for Rashad Bateman in this football game with Zay Flowers out. We'll talk about Zay a little bit more later, but with Zay Flowers out, what an opportunity. And boy, oh boy, Rashad Bateman instantly paid off. Lamar Jackson in the red zone, the Baltimore Ravens in the red zone, the best team in the NFL this season. At this point, one of the best teams of all time in the red zone. They're up there, man. 3rd and 13 following one of Lamar Jackson's 2 incompletions in the first half. It is 1st and 10 at the Pittsburgh 12. Jackson throws the ball away. They run, I think, a little handoff. Might have been like a little sweep. Got a shotgun perhaps to Justice Hill and lose some yards. 3rd and 13. And for how much talk there's been of the Ravens jitters and pressing and things that we talked about and things that the Ravens themselves have talked about, Lamar Jackson delivers a touch strike in rhythm over the safeties' heads to Rashad Bateman, who reels it in. Rashad Bateman got open in the end zone later in this game at the end of the first half. Justice Hill made some plays in this one. He ends up scoring there instead. Bateman propelled that in ways, and Lamar Jackson, of course, with a nice throw and catch. Mike Tomlin calls a timeout in this game prior to the first half. Coming down there, it was 3rd and 2. It went Derrick Henry for 3, Derrick Henry for 5. It is 3rd and 2. The Steelers take a timeout with 1 minute and 8 seconds left. The Baltimore Ravens might very well have been content to head into the half with a 14-0 lead and getting the football. But no, they take a timeout. The Ravens attack Joey Porter with Rashad Bateman. We talked about last week. Porter had given him a little bit of some fits. No Ryan. And 9-yard gain. Next play, Lamar Jackson rolls out, hits Nelson Aguilar. Baltimore calls a timeout. They hit Anthony Miller, who Joey Porter traps on the sideline there. Call a second timeout with 1 timeout left. Jackson hits a touch pass to Mark Andrews in stride, who's able to rumble for probably about 10, 12 yards after the catch. Gets out of bounds at the Pittsburgh 44. So up into field goal range. There's 37 seconds left. You're good for a field goal. You're up there. You've got some time to get a couple more yards. And then, man, Isaiah Likely, what a player he's become, and how much he showed out on his 3 touches, how much he showed out as a blocker. And obviously the Ravens run for 300 yards, Chief Keef, Obla, in this game. But Isaiah Likely and these wide receivers and these tight ends, we'll talk about the offensive line. You can go check out all Cole's offensive line content he likes to do over at Road Graders. But the perimeter blocking, the aggression of the Pat Ricards, of the Isaiah Likeleys, of the Mark Andrews, the tenacity, the composure, and ultimately the big catch Likely has in the first half, then the big catch and run and stiff arm into the earth of, I think, Cam Sutton. My God, man, that was the emphasis on the syllable of the Baltimore Ravens crushing the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, they roll down there, get down to the Pittsburgh 5, spike the ball, right? Pittsburgh then takes another timeout, and Lamar Jackson makes some magic happen in a tight pocket. Don't even know what to say, man. The ability to extend plays, there's nothing to analyze. There's nothing to say other than he's special. Him, Josh Allen, Mahomes, man, those guys can do some crazy stuff. And to do all of those things, to number one, be so composed, but then to number two, go. Where did they start that drive? They started that drive with 1:53 left at their own 10-yard line, and they go 90 yards in 2 minutes to go up 21-0. That ended the game. That ended the game. The Steelers come out in the second half. They attack downfield, something I expect the Bills to do. We'll talk about that. But the Steelers put a miraculous effort forth, and it was just too much to overcome. The Ravens do score one touchdown and kind of tighten up, hand the ball off, things of that nature, as I like to say. And it was too much. They overwhelmed them. The perimeter blocking, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. Of all people, I will give much credit to Emmanuel Acho, who did a lovely breakdown of the Ravens option game. And it is not even the option at this point. The Steelers were attacking the Ravens run game with scrape exchange, which the 49ers did years ago. The Bills did in Buffalo in Orchard Park years ago, which resulted in that Matt Milano getting shook highlight of Lamar Jackson, the scrape exchange, basically crashing the running back and then having a linebacker replace the read defender. And it got into the seventh layer of hell of what the Ravens were doing. They were blocking the read man, so there's no read. It's not an option at this point, which is they've been doing this for 7 years now. It's so far beyond sticking the ball in the belly and reading one defender. It has gone so out of control beyond that at this point. But Steelers were crashing. Lamar Jackson pulls the ball a couple of times. So then the exchange player, the linebacker, the Peyton Wilson or the Roberts, or it was typically one of those two for the most part, a little bit less Queen, but one of those two then trying to go fill. So then the Ravens started blocking the read man, then blocking the replacement, then blocking the replacement's replacement. They knew what the Steelers were doing, and there was nothing the Steelers could have done to stop it. TJ Watt would come crashing down. Mark Andrews would just ride him out. Then a linebacker comes over top, and then there would be an offensive lineman for him, and then there would be an Isaiah Likely who would arc block and go release upfield. It was the most beautiful form of option football I've ever seen in my entire life, and for it to be executed in the NFL playoffs in the year 2025, considering where football was a few years ago, 2015, the run game, running backs don't matter, punching the ball downfield, spread, the RPO, all that crap. Just so fun to watch. So fun to watch. Beautiful. And the tenacity at which Tyler Linderbaum got after the Steelers front in this game, reaching, getting in space. Man, a joy to watch. And again, I'm going to give a shout out to Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews in this game. They weren't perfect, but they're getting after it. They're getting after it on those edges. So it was, wow. What a performance. I mean, running for 300 yards on the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs is a warning shot, I think, to the rest of the NFL. And there were a couple procedural penalties. They don't have Zay Flowers. Things weren't perfect. To be able to run the ball that way, I will say it makes it easier. Makes it a lot easier for Lamar Jackson to have 2 incompletions in the first half as he finishes the first half. I tweeted it earlier. Finishes the first half 13 of 15, 144 yards and 2 touchdowns for a 146 rating. what else is there to say? What else is there to say? Again, I think that's a warning shot to the NFL. I don't know what you pick. I don't know what you do. There's space. These tight ends are awesome. God forbid Zay Flowers is able to come back. Since the bye, I tweeted it out. If you're on here, you probably saw it, but I'm just going to reiterate it just because I believe it's unbelievable that this team went into the bye losing 2 straight to the Steelers and the Eagles, 2 good defenses. Since the bye in week 14, which was the last bye that any NFL team had, there's a couple others. I think the Texans had that same bye, some other teams. But the Ravens have outscored their opponents 163-57. They have outgained their opponents 2,196 yards to 1,272 yards. Basically, tripling the scoreboard and doubling the yardage. Lamar Jackson, 135.7 passer rating, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception through the air, adding in a rushing touchdown. He's been the best player in the NFL, plain and simple, since that bye. So it's crazy to watch what they've done on the offensive side of the ball, the fluidity of it, and where they were earlier this year with offensive line struggles, getting Henry fully integrated, and just getting rhythm and timing down with Rashad Bateman, with some of these other receivers, has been a ton of fun to watch. And doing it against good defenses. I mean, the Browns aren't a bottom 5 DVOA defense. Ran that boat race them in week 18, needing to. The Eagles, the Steelers, the Texans. We saw what the Texans just did to the Chargers. The Ravens ran the Texans off the field. Legitimately, literally ran them off the field. Couldn't do a damn thing. Certainly couldn't do a damn thing to this Ravens offense. So they've been a wagon, and they're going to circle up the wagons and try and head up to the wagon of Buffalo Bills, who just dismantled the Denver Broncos and have been peaking as well. What the Bills offensive line and Josh Allen did in that game was so fun to watch. So we're going to get into that one later this week. What a fun matchup. And I said it on this podcast. I said my conspiracy theory will switch to the tinfoil hat. There was no way that the NFL was going to allow the Pittsburgh Steelers to travel to Kansas City or to Buffalo instead of the Ravens Buffalo. How on God's green earth would the NFL rob itself of the 2 biggest talking points of the season, playing in the playoffs and then likely going and playing Patrick Mahomes? And if we're keeping this on, I mean, the Chiefs are going to win. I know a lot of people are talking themselves into the Texans. Andy Reid's had 2 weeks to get ready. They're getting healthy, getting Hollywood integrated, all those things. But what a treat we're in for. Regardless, this is what everyone's wanted. It is, honestly, like I think of Brady and Manning. It's, I don't know. I'm trying to think. It's beyond that now. There's 3 of them, right? Allen, Mahomes, and Jackson are doing unprecedented things in the league at the same time, in the same conference, playing in the playoffs every single year. Bills and the Chiefs have already gone at it. How many times now? 3? Let's see. At this point, they played last year, of course, in the divisional round, 27-24, played the Ravens. 2022, they played the Jags and the Bengals. The Bengals mixing in there as well, honestly. They played the Bills in 2021. They played the Bills in 2020. So they've been going at it every year. You mix the Bengals in there. You mix the Ravens in there. The league is thrilled with what's happening on this side of the bracket. I'll tell you that much. That's just what I want to say, and I'll take the tinfoil hat back off now. But, man, exciting matchups all around. This is what Ravens fans asked for, right? I mean, at least I did. You want the hardest path possible. You don't want any doubt. You want to be a champion. This is fun, man. This is the fun stuff. This is playing the bosses in the video game. When you're just a fan and you just watch, this is what cinema is. This is the maximum entertainment value instead of the Chargers or the Texans. See the Ravens go play the Bills. If they can win, go play the Chiefs. And even if the Ravens Or to lose. We'll knock on wood for them there. The Bills Chiefs, AFC Championship. People have been waiting on these games. I think we have reached the next era of football is what I'm describing. And right, this is what people have been waiting for all year. Can somebody knock off the Chiefs? So whoever does between the Ravens and Bills, does get it done. I know a lot of people will be pulling for that team. And now the Chiefs have been able to work themselves into being the underdog, but we'll get to all that when we get to it. This game still has to be played on Sunday at 6:30. But man, this is what people have been waiting for. A ton. Get to some of the comments here. Chad, great to see you at the tailgate, my friend. Nick says, looking forward to your analysis of the Ravens run game versus Buffalo front seven and how the Ravens could best attack the Buffalo offensive line. We'll get a little bit deeper into the X's and O's throughout the week in those regards, but I don't like the Bills matchup up front. I don't think they've got Dre in there in the middle. Milano's a smart linebacker. I just don't think they have the mass required. I think you need a devastating nose tackle. I think you need a Jordan Davis and someone who plays like a Jalen Carter. I think you need that kind of combination inside. I love Ed Oliver coming out. He's been a good NFL player. He has a ton of explosiveness and get off and things like that. They need a big game out of him. I just don't know, man. The best thing that the Bills could try to do to the Ravens run game is mix it up. I think you run some 5- and 6-man fronts. I think you run some 3-man fronts. I think you scrape exchange. I think you play it flat. I think you switch if safeties are in man or not. I think they need to bring some heat, especially if no Zay Flowers. And the Bills' defense is so disciplined on the back end. I don't think they have impact safeties in the run game. Taylor Rapp's a nice player. I'm trying to protect those safeties from the run game. I don't want them having to come downhill. I'm not trying to rely on them in the hole with Derrick Henry. I don't think that Damar Hamlin, Taylor Rapp in the hole, they're not a recipe for success. Teron Johnson, a really nice player, a really smart player that can come off the edge and try and catch some things from behind. What we saw the Ravens do a better job of, in my opinion, was TJ Watt. They would run away from at times, especially in that first matchup this year. They would run away from him, and he's super athletic. His get off is crazy. If you try and run away and leave him unblocked, he'll chase it down. We watched him crush Derrick Henry once, that big highlight hit in Pittsburgh. That is the bad thing to do. And I think Teron Johnson is the player that the Bills would want to do that with. Have him be unblocked on the backside, try and shoot some stuff. And the difference here, right? I mean, it's going to be loud. Communication is not going to be as good. And your ability to change and fluidly change, that's what the Ravens need to be minding their P's and Q's about in Buffalo. It's going to be very loud. So you're going to be going silent count and getting one change across with gestures, with motions. We hear Lamar Jackson, penny, 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 penny. Always trying to change the play. It's going to be a little tougher. So operationally, I think that's a big deal. And the use of motion. Patrick Queen made some interesting comments before this game about Zay Flowers going out does kind of have a butterfly effect, which was interesting. It's something I didn't think of at all. And that's why, these guys get paid millions and I, have a neon sign and talk about it on YouTube. But he said Flowers was the motion player so often, which is true, of course, and kind of gives you an indication of what they might be doing. But then suddenly it's Andrews in motion and Likely in motion and Wallace in motion and Bateman in motion and Henry in motion and Hill in motion. Ravens did a good job using their backs in motion in the run game in this game, which was interesting, trying to get some things going. So it's tougher to do that when it's loud. It will throw your timing off. It's easier to do it when it's quiet. Now, Marlon Humphrey tweeted the counter. I mean, it goes on and on. Marlon Humphrey tweeted and said it was so loud that Agent Zero cussed him out. Roquan Smith cussed him out because he thought he wasn't communicating when he was. So he said he had to scream the rest of the game. So, it makes communicating more difficult for the defense as well. But I think a lot of it's going to come down to just staying in neutral situations, getting to 2nd and 7, getting those 3-yard runs on first down, 2nd and 7, 3rd and short, 3rd and manageable. And that is what the Bills do a great job of offensively. And talking of their front, Spencer Brown, someone that was he was a my guy for me coming out of the draft. one of the most athletic linemen ever to test, arguably the most athletic lineman ever to test. He had a huge game against the Broncos, bullying people. So the Bills do a really good job getting into third and short, third and manageable, those situations as well. And that's playoff football. Getting into third and 3. That is simply what playoff football is. And we saw the Ravens do a great job of it. The Bills do a great job of it. We'll get deeper into the X's O's on it. Jake here in the comments, they finally did what we all knew they could do against a capable Steelers defense. What they were capable of against the Steelers, exactly. Again, the Steelers have been chasing the Ravens over the last 5-6 years. They are the ones that the Steelers think about in the offseason and draft and sign and scheme for. Not the other way around. The Ravens want to play the Chiefs. The Ravens want to play the Bills. So being the hunted, the Ravens finally turned into the hunter against the Steelers. I think focused their efforts, especially after that first game was such a punch in the mouth. They had no answer, man. And frankly, the Steelers quit. DBs, the Tylan Wallace, 2nd and 20. Go check out Steelers Twitter, man, what they're saying about that play. 2nd and 20, Tylan Wallace just rumbles for 5 yards, holds onto the ball. The Ravens haven't turned the ball over, I think, since December 21st, since Lamar threw that pick when Patrick Queen pressured him at home in the red zone, and then Marlon Humphrey had the pick 6 after. That was the last time the Ravens turned the ball over. So the ball hasn't been touching the ground. Like I said, first half, 13 of 15 with a spike and a throwaway. Ball is not touching the ground. Ravens tightened up in the second half a little bit, but again, I loved that. I loved that they did that. I loved that they handed the ball off to Derrick Henry a bunch of times and ended up having their breakaway touchdown on a insane run where they're blocking go watch Emmanuel Acho's breakdown. It's fantastic. But yeah, it was so much fun to watch. Throwing the ball to Likely is a guaranteed 6 yards. Yeah, dude is a problem. Big problem after the catch. We got some other ones here. What are the Ravens going to do about Brandon Stephens? Man, I'm going to say this. I know for a fact 2 things. I know that the Ravens know it's an issue. They don't really have a lot of issues going on defensively right now. That's pretty much it. Ardarius Washington and Nate Wiggins let a ball get between them. George Pickens makes a super cool play. Like he kind of backpedaled through it, snagged, confident play there. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to attack right downfield. I think they're going to go there early. They want to have Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper on Brandon Stephens and Trey White. This is a Trey White, redemption. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Trey White used to play for the Bills. I don't think there was any animosity there. He just had some injuries and, the Bills let him go. I'm sure he might feel a certain type of way about it, but I know 2 things. Number one, that matchup will determine this game. I know that the Ravens coaching staff has all of their attention on Brandon Stephens and Trey White and the safeties and how they're going to play different things right now. Those guys have to make a play. You can't hide them for, it's going to come down to that. You can do certain things. You can run certain coverages. You don't want to limit yourself that much. Brandon Stephens, you probably won't ever hear this, but when in doubt, get depth. Kyle Hamilton looked like he was trying to communicate like a 3 strong. He wanted Stephens to take that route so Hamilton could play the middle of the field, looked like, and just sat at the top of the route and let Van Jefferson run by him. When in doubt, get the fuck back. Get back. Don't let the ball go over your head. When in doubt, when there's any confusion, get the fuck back and play the 9 route. If they hit you with a 7, fine. See if you can work get this receiver to stop their feet after the catch and let the cavalry come. Fucking hold. DPI. Unless you're in the end zone. And even if you are, whatever. So that's going to determine this game. I'll tell you that right now. You look at the Bills' struggles and what they didn't do in that game, and then what they did air it out to Keon Coleman a little bit in that game. But you look at that game, you look at what just happened in the Steelers game. Josh Allen's a great touch passer. He can hit those kind of 15 to 30-yard touch passes so well down the sideline. Had some really nice throws in that Broncos game, as he always does. Straight up, one of those guys is going to have to make a play. And you can hide them all you want. They're still going to have to make a play. I promise you. I promise you those guys will determine this game. I promise you those guys will. You're as strong as your weakest link. Those guys will determine the Ravens' fate this weekend. And if they are to win, the rest of the season. I assure you of that. It's not possible to hide them. I've watched this before. I watched it in the January 2015 in New England in the divisional round. I watched it. I watched them pick on a weak link. That's what you do. What did Jake and I always talk about? Who's my bitch? It's Trey White. It's Brandon Stevens. That's what's going to happen. So what can you do about it? I mean, you can roll coverage. You can have him squat. And maybe the coaches come back and say to Kyle Hamilton, like, your call that you tried to make to go 3 strong makes sense and is good, but don't fuck with him. Like, don't ask him to do things. Don't get in his head. Got to kind of simplify things for him, right? So maybe we see Humphrey kick out a little more. Maybe. I don't know. But Trey White got beat like a drum too. He doesn't have the foot speed he once had. So that's the bad stuff. Nate Wiggins, Darius Washington, I think of Coleman's a big dude. He's been able to get some separation. We'll see. Falele finally played mean. Yeah, he was getting after it. He's been getting after it since the bye. He's starting to realize how big he is, and that's what we've been asking for entire season. Dominate dudes. Finish through the whistle. He was chirping at the end of that game, waving by. When he's playing mean, he is scary, man. He's as big as they get. He's got that awesome full sleeve. He's a freaking monster. So this offensive line, they're not missing stunts like crazy like they were in the beginning of the year. Things have calmed down. They're smooth. We'll see. I'm still pretty critical of Falele in ways, but he's definitely mentally a lot better than he was. So you're strong as your weakest link. He's not that weak anymore. He's not, world beater, but can't have 5 of them on your line unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles. Kurt K, how much do you think the Bills linebackers being healthy this time around changes things? I mean, Milano's a smart linebacker. He's going to fuck up less. He's going to get into the line of scrimmage and attack blockers more frequently. So I think it helps. I think it definitely helps. But again, if I'm the Bills, I'm trying to hide my safeties from Derrick Henry. They're not the same caliber of athlete. Milano's a good player. I love Bernard coming out. A lot of Bills fans floating, and I have followed a ton of them. They're, all the cover 1 guys, they're all fantastic. A lot of them are floating, playing more base. The Bills played base defense with 3 off-ball linebackers on the field. 3.5% of snaps this season. It was dead last. It's the lowest amount. They love nickel. They love Teron Johnson. They don't like their safeties having to play, single high coverage. So maybe they do. It would be very surprising. They very rarely play base defense. It's been years. I think the Ravens would like that. I think they would like base defense. I think they like Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews and, getting them the ball a little bit, getting them some matchups. Benford's a really good player. Rasul Douglas has been known to bait some throws, so then you get into that whole thing. But the Ravens are the number 1 team in the NFL running into heavy boxes. Lamar Jackson holds folks. So got a Bills fan in here. Fun. People are having fun with him. Texans offense was still ass versus the Chargers. What else do we got? See if there's any other fun comments. Yeah. Tyler Constantine, Travis Jones dominated that first matchup. He really did. He really was a big problem for them. TJ has not looked himself because that happened prior to his ankle injury. Maybe not, actually. I don't believe so. I'll have to double check. But yeah, he had a monster game. He was giving Josh Allen fits. He was giving their right guard. Who is it? McGovern? No, is it Torrance? Let me take a look here. He was giving their right guard fits. He was giving their center fits. And again, I'm not talking about Ryan. David Edwards, Connor McGovern, and Osiris Torrance. Yeah, he was giving those guys issues. Giving them a lot of issues consistently. We've seen what type of player he can be. Bills are a different team on the road or at home. Bills Mafia. So I watched a origin of Adam Schefter did a piece on NFL Live, and it was floating around the internet. It's a weird story. It's not what I thought it was. This game will be easier than Steelers, promise. I do think that the Ravens offense is a terrible matchup for the Bills. On the other side of the ball, again, I think it's just going to come down to the Bills are going to have to push the ball downfield. And if they can do it and the Ravens secondary is not playing the ball aggressively and not hitting, then I think the Bills can score points too. I think that's the key to a shootout. I think it's very simple. Red zone, it's wild. What else do we got here? What do we think about the play with Derrick Henry and the fake Lamar jet sweep? I think they got a little something off that. I think they've been saving some things. I think they got a little something to continue off of that. They said they only repped that 2 times. I think they lied about that. I think they just said that. I think someone asked Derrick Henry, said, yeah, I think we repped that twice this week. That's a lie. That was a lie. But it worked. I mean, the whole back end was flowing away, and Derrick Henry just takes off. Whole back end. What else do we got here? I think Zay plays. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think he plays. If it is an LCL sprain, I don't think he plays. Unless he's on his, Terrell Owens hyperbaric chamber, broken leg shit. And I think there's probably just still some swelling. Harbaugh did say he would be comfortable with him not practicing and playing, which makes sense to me. He's taken 1 million snaps this year. I think this question was about Brandon Stevens. Why don't they bench him? Who plays? Jalen Armour-Davis, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. It's just unfortunate. I think Brandon Stevens had such a good year last year, and this year has just been so unable to make plays. He's there. Just doesn't make them. So I think you make the plane out of that if you're Buffalo. That's what I would do. Straight up. Yeah, JJ Sanders says it well. He's just got to make a couple, man. That's all it is. He's made some. Had that almost pick in the end zone. Made a couple plays. Russell Rollo with a good question here. If Humphrey was healthy, yeah, probably. I think definitely. Who knows? That could have had a whole. That could have made Kyle Hamilton end up not playing safety or something weird. More. Judge Baltimore here. Coleman and Cooper versus Stevens and Wiggins. Shakir and Humphrey in the slot need to limit chunk plays. Yeah, and Orlovsky loves talking about how the Bills love running 4x1 stuff. Guys, if you are watching, would love to have you on YouTube. Would love for you to like and subscribe. We'll be going live every night this week. If you want to help send the fellas to Buffalo, we would love any tips, donations, things like that. We've done some ticket giveaways, and we're trying to make some trips up. So anything you can donate, send the boys to Buffalo. We'll give you content. If you can't make it, tons and tons and tons of fun content on the way. But yeah, those matchups, pretty much it. And Coleman been running a lot of those 45-degree breaking routes against Buffalo, gave them fits. And I mean, it's that. It's also pressure, man. It's all tied together. So Bills' offensive line has been playing really well. Those 2 tackles, that's about as, in my opinion, it's about as good of a tackle combo as there is in the NFL. I would probably take Mailata and Johnson over them. Decker and Sewell. And I don't know. I think that's more of a toss-up than people might realize. I think the hype of the draft status of Sewell, he's very good, but I think Spencer Brown and Dawkins are fantastic. They're tough too. What else we got? Bills Mafia was never a thing until they got Tyrod and were competitive. It happened from Stevie Johnson dropping a pass is what spurned the Stevie Johnson basically blamed God for dropping a pass. And then a bunch of media ran with it the next day, like way after Adam Schefter tweeted it. Well, thank you so much for the donation, Kelly. Appreciate it. We're going to try and head up there. Maybe keep going if the Ravens keep going. We'll see. Really appreciate it, Kelly. Thank you so much. If anybody else wants to try and send the fellas up there, we would appreciate it. Anything you can do to helps. Again, if you know anybody going to a game or something, they need a coat, we'll try and get them a coat. If there's any Bills fans up there, anybody that wins something to go to a game or Anybody that you just see is cold or has any issues like that, get some kids some coats, whatever we can do. If you ever know of anything like that or experience that in your own family, please let us know. We'll get kids coats. It's cold as hell out. But with that in mind, yeah, I mean, some other comments here. And people are saying they're not impressed with what the Bills did. I get it in a way. They didn't push the issue a ton. They just ran. But the impressive thing about what the Bills did was, again, stay out of negative situations. They got into 3rd and short a ton, and then they run the QB sneak, and then they run for 5 yards, and then Josh Allen hit somebody for 7 yards, and then they get another 4 yards on the ground, and then suddenly it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. They have a big quarterback who can run. James Cook is a good back. They have a good offensive line. So if I'm the Bills, man, I'm looking at what the Eagles did against the Ravens, frankly. Since that transition, that's the only team that scored 20 points against the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. It's RPO. It spread them out. RPO, bang, bang, throw the ball to the tight end in the flat, run, hit, see if you can sneak something up a sideline, see if you can get them cooking a little bit. That's how I'm attacking the Ravens. I'm spreading it out big time. Don't want to fight them in a phone booth. James Cook's a good back, and maybe he can break something, once, but the Ravens, the success rate has been consistently dominant against the run. They will get you into 2nd and long and 3rd and long. And Kyle Hamilton, man, that's a difference maker, right? There's not a lot of dudes on football fields that are that size like Kyle Hamilton and Josh Allen, and that are quick and can kind of drop the hammer. Dafe Owe had a nice play against him. So I'm looking at those two guys that are fast enough, physical enough, big enough to take him on. So I don't think nobody's taking the Bills lightly, Killicam. Nobody's taking the Bills lightly. They won, 13 games? And again, maybe I eat these words, but it's really hard to blow a team out twice. It's really, really hard. You just don't see it happen that often. So I wouldn't expect that to be the case. In Buffalo, they get to operate their offense a little bit more smoothly, communicate more effectively. That's a big part, man. I mean, it was deafening in Baltimore that night against the Bengals. The Ravens fans, I think, are back this year. Last year, we made a big hoopla about it, did, make the bank great again, all that fun stuff. It was not nearly I don't think it was as loud as at the AFC Championship game at all, or the Texans game last year as it was against the Steelers. So it was awesome. That game was awesome. The show was awesome. Everything about that. As a night game against the Steelers, couldn't have been, I think the stadium staff, the experienced staff, game day staff did an awesome job with that game. It was a ton of fun. The light show's crazy. It was wild. Sports Guru says fast track advantage. The Bills have turf and dominate on that kind of surface. Lamar moves differently on turf. It is going to be freezing. It is going to be cold and windy. So won't be as slick as grass, but yeah, Lamar does have speed, but always does, man. Always does. Sabry Face, 2019 Packers Niners. Niners blew them out twice, regular season and NFC title. They overwhelmed them physically. Yeah, I mean, it happens. It does happen. It's just tough. Again, I do genuinely think that I've said it throughout the season. I think there's been some memes about it. I think the Chiefs are a bad matchup for the Ravens. I think the Bills are a bad matchup for the Chiefs. I think the Ravens are a bad matchup for the Bills. I think it is a snake swallowing itself in that regard. William, a friend offered you a ticket to Buffalo, second row, 40-yard line. Should I go long drive? If you don't, I will, my friend. If you don't, I will. I think everyone would tell you yes. That's also not that long of a drive. It is cold, but 6 hours is doable. 7 is where it gets tough. 8 is the limit of driving, especially in one day. 8 is where it gets really tough. So about a 6-hour drive, 7-hour drive. Not too bad. 14 degrees with a wind chill of 8. Yeah, it's going to be cold as hell. And the Ravens have been playing in the cold, man. The Browns game was really cold. This Saturday wasn't too bad, but yeah, William, you're going to do it. Awesome. So with that, we'll get a little bit more advanced. Did a quick 40 minutes here. I wanted to say thank you to everybody who tuned in last week. I wanted to say thank you to the Baltimore Ravens for taking care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers 28-14. And just touch base. We're going to be going live every night this week. Kurt K says, shout out to Samantha. Yeah, I got to meet up with her. I went to middle school with her. So I got to meet up with her after the game. We went out and about in Baltimore. It was a ton of fun. She's the best. And I mean, I'm biased, but she's my friend. But I thought that was a beautiful anthem. I thought she sung it so well. Everything, every note was, I don't know. What it was, I like when it's not too showy, but it shows the vocal talent. That's where I like it to be. And I thought she did an amazing job. The O was insane. So thank you so much, my friends. Appreciate everyone for joining. We will be going live for a full kind of jumbo set tomorrow. And appreciate you guys, man. We'll have more in. We'll do some film breakdown. We'll talk about the Steelers, talk a little bit more in depth about the Bills, try and get some guests, some things like that. So thank you so much, everyone. See ya and arrivederci.